Welcome back, guys. This is part 2 on the 6 steps. We're going to show you how to grow a spectacular business that works with or without you. And today we're talking about niche. Okay, level 2 of the 6 steps is called niche, and it's really about sustainable, predictable cash flow. This is when we're starting to generate cash coming into the business. It has to be predictable and it has to be sustainable. So the first thing we're going to talk about, the first element of creating sustainable, predictable cash flow is really simply your USP. So USP stands for unique selling point. Why should I buy from you rather than your competition? What makes you different? This is a massive question that takes a lot of answering. It's not something you're going to be answering today, but it's something to start thinking about. Because if you create a really compelling, strong USP, then we're not competing on price anymore, we're competing in value. And we can use that in our marketing, and when you can use that to generate sustainable, predictable cash flow in your business. Listen, let me tell you a little story about a really compelling USP. Some of you might have heard of the tuxedo plumber. Certainly a story I've told before. But this is about a plumber on his way to a black tie event with his wife. And he's got his tuxedo on. And he gets a call from one of his loyal customers who's in trouble. And he asked his wife, would you mind if I popped round and helped this customer out? So to cut a long story short, he went and helped this lady out, thought nothing more of it, and went and enjoyed his evening with his wife. The very next day, the phone started ringing. Is that the tuxedo plumber? And from that day forward, he started to build a reputation as the tuxedo plumber. Now, he built a very large business on the back of that, and every single one of his plumbers went to the jobs dressed in tuxedos. You know, the point is, how many people did that customer stop and tell that our plumber had arrived in a tuxedo? If he'd arrived in a boiler suit, probably wouldn't have told anyone. She was probably stopping strangers in the street. Oh my God, wait till you hear this. My plumber arrived in a tuxedo. So your USP doesn't always have to be about your service or your product. It could be something to do with delivery as well. So have a think about that. Start to answer some questions about what you could use as a really compelling and strong USP in your business. Okay, so the second part of niche, once we've understood what our USP is our business chassis. Our business chassis is called the 5 ways. And I've drawn it up on the board here. Now, pretty much every customer I talk to knows how many customers they've got. They know what their turnover is, and they certainly know what their profit is as well. Now, why do you think these are in red? Now, I've put these in red because these are outcomes. And what the business chassis 5 ways looks at is the variables that deliver the outcomes. Because these are the things that we can build strategies around to build your business. So yes, these numbers are important, but almost more important than that is the variables that deliver these outcomes. So the 5 ways talks about the number of leads that are coming into the business, multiplied by your conversion percentage will equal the number of customers. Then we're going to talk about the number of times they buy off you, multiplied by the average transaction value or the amount of money they spend with you, equals your turnover. Multiplied by margin will equal your profit. So let's have a look at each of these individually. So if we start looking at leads, really the question is, what strategies have you got to get more leads into the business? I mean, we're not looking at huge gains here. If we increase each of these variables by only 10%, so marginal gains across the business chassis, so if we achieved a 10% consistent increase in each of these factors, our profit goes up a massive 61%. 61% straight onto your bottom line. So let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail. So leads. I've got 87 strategies we could use for growing your leads. But what strategies are you using right now? What's your marketing strategy look like? How do we increase our leads? Just by 10%. So if we've got 100 leads a month coming in, how do we make that 110? What focus have you got in increasing your leads just by 10%? So the second element of 5 ways is our conversion ratio. So what are your strategies for increasing your conversion ratio? First question, are you measuring it? Do you actually know what your conversion ratio is? I'm always surprised by the amount of business owners that don't know what the conversion ratio is for their sales team. And they always overestimate it. You know, if there's something, I've heard 70, I've heard 80%, but when we start measuring it, it's usually much, much lower than that. It's usually 30 or below. But what strategies have you got to increase your conversion ratio? So that could be as easy as, how do you answer the phone? You know, what scripts are you using when you answer the phone? What questions are you asking during your sales process? You know, what collateral are you sending between your touch points of your sales process? You know, I've got about 70 strategies for increasing our conversion ratio just by 10%. Not 10% more, but 10% better. So if your conversion ratio is 33%, we're looking for 36.3%. 10% more, not 10% better. So let me tell you a little story about conversion ratio. So one of my larger customers that I work with has an inbound call center, and they're generating around about 700K in inbound leads every single month. But by working on the scripts that the sales team are using on the telephone, by working on the objection handling as well, with the same amount of calls coming in, we actually increased the order intake by exactly 10%. So it went from 700 to 770,000 pounds a month. So 70,000 pound a month more turnover with the same amount of calls, just by changing how they answered the phone, just by changing how they dealt with the objections, and just by changing the questions they were asking the client while they were on the phone. Okay, so we've covered the first two elements of the 5 ways. We've covered leads, and when we multiply our leads by our conversion ratio, it equals the amount of customers we've got in our business. Then we're going to start looking about how often they buy off you, the number of transactions. So first of all, do you measure how often your customers on average buy from you over the year or over the month? And what strategies have you got in place to invite them back to buy more? It's really as simple as that. You know, do you write to them? Are you in constant communication? Are you in regular communication with your clients? Do every one of your clients know every product that you sell? We talked about that in one of my previous videos, the Magic Matrix, where we're looking at what clients don't know some of your product range. You know, so what strategies have you got in place to make sure your customers are buying from you more often? Again, we're only looking for a small marginal gain in the number of transactions. So if people are buying off you 10 times a year, how do we get them to buy off you 11 times a year? Okay, so let's look a little bit closer at average transaction value. I mean, I don't know how many solicitors are watching. Here's a great strategy for you guys. You know, it's really simple. If someone's coming in to see a solicitor, why not ask them, when did you last have your will reviewed? Historically, 1 in 10 will say, what a great idea, let's do that at the same time. That's a really good example of, would you like fries with that? Or if you're buying a coffee, can I get you a cake at the same time? It's all about cross-selling and upselling and making sure we maximize every opportunity in the business to increase the average transaction value each time we're dealing with a client. So the final element of the 5 ways business chassis is margin. And if there's any accountants watching out there, you'll know that if we increase each of these elements by 10%, our margin's going to go up anyway. But there are strategies for driving your margin up that you can implement in your business. You know, it could be as simple as a price increase, or it could be making sure your customers are focused on your higher margin items. You know, in a retail outlet, are they in prime location? Are you really driving your customers to your high margin items? Or on a website, are they front and center? So in summary, when we're talking about niche, we're talking about sustainable, predictable cash flow coming into your business. And that starts with a really compelling, unique selling point, backed up with our 5 ways business chassis, where we're really lifting the lid on your business and looking in detail about what strategies you've got to create sustainable, predictable cash flow in your business. Create more leads, convert more to become customers, make sure they're buying off you a little bit more, make sure your average transaction value is maximized and your profit margins are as high as they can possibly be. Okay guys, so I hope you found that video useful. That's step 2 on the journey to creating a spectacular business, a business that will work with or without you. Next, we're going to talk about leverage. So please join me in that video, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the other side.